Productive Pastor 122 Big Project Design. Welcome back, friends. Productive Pastor Chad Brooks here. This is the place online we talk about healthy ministry through strategic productivity. As always, you can find the show notes online, refchadbrooks.com/PPP/122 for this episode. Excited to be here with you today. I've realized that a couple episodes back, we talked about Cal Newport's push-pull methodology for projects, and I had a couple fun interchanges on the interwebs with people in the community talking about project management, all these sorts of things. Now, I've got another episode in the can. I'm going to talk about that at the end of the episode, and I decided I'm going to throw something in here that's outside of the production calendar, doing kind of a mini project management series, I guess. It's split across multiple episodes, and there's stuff in between that isn't there, but just kind of going into this space and doing this. So, next episode, we're going to talk about how to do this inside of the future, but today we're talking about big project design. And this episode is sponsored by my course, Becoming Productive. If you're looking for a way from A to Z to understand how you work, to understand your own uniquenesses, those sorts of things, and also to build out a personal approach to productivity, this course is there for you. You can find a link to that in the show notes as well. I've also got a fun new template pack coming out in December. Make sure to keep your eyes peeled out for the wait list. It'll only be on sale for 72 hours. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the Productive Pastor email list. I write almost weekly to that list about ministry and productivity, but I've got a special surprise about my previous template pack, the planner template pack, that I'm only going to make available to that list. And so if you missed out on that, curious, keep your eyes focused on the list for that fun announcement. But let's get into the big content. So I was having a conversation over on Twitter with Charlie Harper, part of the community, and he was just like, hey, how do you define a project? Like, what really is a project? This was after the episode 120 on Cal Newport's push-pull methodology. And so, we had a quick answer, and we agreed the thing he was thinking about was absolutely a project. But how would I answer this question? Well, it's initially maybe a little bit more complicated than I think I would like. But a project ultimately is, some sort of a sequence of work that's designed to get you to a new place. That's how I would describe it. I love the book Start at the End by Matt Wallaert. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a great tool for the way I like to think about this. I've been doing this for years, read his book a couple years back, and was like, man, this just fits in with my preferred method of work. So to cruise over the show notes, I've got a link in there to grab a copy of that book. It's really, really good, and it's not too intense. So, that book, Start at the End, is fantastic. But projects are the sort of work which tends to stretch out. And with focused design, projects have the ability to do really big things. It's not just something that's long, but to me, a project is something that allows you to step upward to a different elevation. Now, sometimes projects might simply be repeating a sequence of work or a system, or sometimes you could discover systems inside of project design. Or it could be the type of focused thing which really brings about a bigger outcome. That's how I like to think about it. Projects aren't just something that takes a lot of work, but they're something that once the work is done, elevates you to a new place. We talk about project management as some sort of a phrase, but I think what project management really is it's this overarching idea about two specific stages, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So imagine project management is over the whole big thing, and the two phases are project design and project doing. It drives them towards completion. And this episode is all about project design. And that's what I want to talk about. It was because I think project design gets missed, especially in big project design. Project design is the process to create a really good project that actually changes things. And in the business world, there's this thing called service design that easily falls into this category. It translates so well into ministry. There's so much business stuff that we like to talk about in ministry, and some of it does not translate over very well. I think this does. Service design is about creating and launching something that really changes people. I've got a lot of books on service design, and what's so funny is I now see service design everywhere. One of the rubs that we can experience in ministry is we feel like the grind never actually gets us to new things that are changing, and that's why this sort of thing matters so much. It's a skill we can learn, And once we understand it, actually, it makes ministry easier. It makes ministry fun, makes it more successful. It allows us to do the things, the reason we got into this job anyway. If I can implore you anything, it's that you can learn this. So let's dive in to the idea. 3 steps today. Well, 4 steps technically, but 3 steps that we're going to talk about. Step 1 is this. You need to start at the end. There's Matt's phrase there. I always call it the benefit of backwards. That's what I've said for years. And I've done this for a long time. This is I don't know how I initially stumbled into this. I don't think it was that intentional. I think it just was the way it made sense in my weird mind. And over time, I've refined it. It might be my strengths of, inside of Clifton Strengths, Gallup Strength Finders, of strategic ideation and learner, and then combining that with my activator and my maximizer. But I've learned so much more about this backwards process. And I've talked about this in the show before. I've written about it before. It's not a new thing. But over the years, and almost every single time I do it, I learn how to actually get better at it. And this first phase is what I broadly call the design phase. And we're in this for a while. So I want you to do this. If you're needing to do this, go grab a whiteboard or get a stack of Post-its and some markers and a big wall, and then go get other people. This always works better with other people. I do this by myself. I've done this by myself quite often. But it's almost as though the more people this is going to impact, the more reason you need to have other people in the design phase. It just always seems to work out better. Now, you can put together your own unique gifts with other people and stack those and cover the waters. It also means you don't just make decisions based off of your own experiential bias, that sort of stuff. So, go grab a space, go grab some people. And I want you to ask yourself this question. This is the big thing right here. What would be the ideal outcome? This stage is all about figuring out what the emotions you want to be at are. So think about it. Where would you love to be at the end of this project? Why are you doing this? What would the results look like? Get down into the details for what it would feel like to be done and at this ideal place. Maybe what new things will be present, new behaviors, new results, new parts of your church culture, any of these sorts of things. Like, what would be the ideal outcome? And you can think about this broadly, and this can have 5 to 7 kind of bullet point ideas behind it. And all of this matters because you're trying to get the best idea of what you're actually shooting for. The last couple episodes, I've referenced Peter Attia's framework of objective, strategy, and tactics. I love this framework for talking about strategy as a church. But this step right here is all about picturing what your objective really is, because you need to hone in on that objective for this project. You don't want to just be doing this project because you want to, or you think you need to, or you think you have to. You need to be doing this project because of what it will bring you and where it will take you to. So step 2, stage 2 is this, and this is my favorite coaching question. I use it all of the time. What would need to be true? You're still in the design phase here, where the previous step was really about trying to gauge and understand the emotions that are there. This is about understanding where and what the actions might be. You're still designing, you're still planning, you're not doing yet, but you're clarifying the necessary inputs to understand the design phase. So what would need to be true? For the team, for the people who are actually doing this and making this happen. What would need to be true for the participants, for the people that you're hoping to impact through this? What would need to be true for the communication angle to this? And don't neglect communication. We'll talk about that more in the episode, but communication is stronger than programming. I swear that right now. What would need to be true for any sorts of logistics or for supplies, or maybe realizing, hey, there's a couple other folks that we might need to have involved in this, or a couple other skill sets we might not need to have involved in there. What would need to be true? And these answers are just trying to get even more clarity in place. For example, let's talk about communications. What would need to be true? The first thing I love about this is I swear that purpose statements for events or for projects or for things or for campaigns, any of that, they need to be required. So my last time I was in full-time ministry, we did a thing called dinner clubs, and we divide the church up into 3 and 4 household units that would get together to have dinner in a different home every few weeks over the course of 3 months. We did it multiple times, loved it. It was a huge, huge thing for our growing church. And we had all sorts of ideas of what we might want to come up to, but we really settled in on this purpose statement. And this you can see how these purpose statements, both show the clarity and then also help make you decisions. But this is our purpose statement. Dinner clubs are a great chance to meet others in the church for an in-home meal, develop deeper relationships, and grow in Christ together. Right there, concise purpose statement. It helps you answer a lot of other questions. Also helps you make decisions. It's also a great short form statement that can be used in all of the communications, bold, all. Regarding the event, the registration page, the social posts, the pulpit announcements, the bulletins, whatever you might want to do, that purpose statement is there and can go anywhere. Dinner clubs are a great chance to meet others in the church for an in-home meal, develop deeper relationships, and grow in Christ together. Having a purpose statement helps you just create all of the other things that are necessary quicker because there's a uniform example of the copywriting there. Different people aren't having to recreate the wheel at every single moment. Also, underneath that purpose statement, sometimes we'd have just 3 bullets. This is how you sign up. This is what you expect. This is how you get communicated with. Like just boom, boom, boom. And it covers the waters. And we can even go a step deeper under this question, what would need to be true for communication? Go into Canva. If you're not using Canva, you need to be using Canva already. Your church, it takes a little bit of work. There's a free account anybody can use. And Canva will give a free nonprofit premium account to churches. You just kind of have to jump through some hoops to prove that you're an actual nonprofit for them. But go into Canva and make your great image for the event. Keep it simple. I did a whole episode on Canva earlier this year. But then once you have your image done, then you can use their resize tool to remake it for the different sizes you might need it for. Making a square image for social, presentation size for screens, vertical for stories, stuff for print, all of it. But you can just use that resize tool, and it keeps things uniform. It keeps things within the idea. It gives it visual recognition. Also helps keep things quick. So under the what would need to be true for communications, hey, we need our purpose statement, we need our image understanding and design, and these are the files we're going to need to get out of it. Right there, it's a couple of quick tools, boom, 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 this is done. Might take you 30 minutes to an hour, but now you've covered so many of the communication needs that have to happen. And I want to go broadly over it here because I want you to learn how to do this. There's a great quote from Matt about in his book, Start to the End. It says this: designing for behavior change is about creating the conditions that allow us to act on our original motivations. He uses the word behavior, but I'm telling you right now, don't make it weird. He's simply talking about people choose to either be part of something or choose to not be part of something. This phase, the phase 2, it's about creating the conditions that bring you into the plan of step 1. And so, drill down as much as you can on what would need to be true, what would need to be true, what would need to be true. You're essentially creating the future action items you might need, but also people are going to need to know about this event. They're going to need to know how to do it, where it is, and why to do it. About an hour of focused work, you've hammered out just those couple of quick things right there. So there's just a larger example of what this might look like. That's why I went into that. Your third step is this: start breaking it down. Now, here's where we begin moving from design phase into doing phase. This is where you begin to think through how you're going to actually do this project. And this is a big thing here. If you struggle to finish things, or if you easily get overwhelmed, or ministry is just so stupid busy, these sorts of things might seem to be insurmountable. Break the project down to such a level where no single task is overwhelming. Now, this is just productivity, period. I've got a thing I've been putting off all year long that needs to get done by December 31st. I finally just went in and said, okay, this is how you can get this done, Chad. You're going to figure out the steps that have to be there. You're going to break the steps down from first to last and then start doing one step each day. And boom, it took me 4 days to have it done. 4 days of 15-minute actions. No big deal at all. Now, this is going to be different for different people and different teams and different projects and tasks, but sometimes I've seen some pretty big projects get broken down to 120-something individual tasks. Now, this sounds like a lot, but those were massively big, huge projects. But honestly, 80% of them could get knocked out in less than 10 minutes. It makes something very doable over the scope of several weeks or several months, especially when you have more than one person doing it. But you're going to have that design phase, the event, the hopeful outcome, And then the what would need to be true is just done to get it broken down like that. And then also, if you've never done anything massively large, like a church capital campaign or launching a brand new church or building a facility, those sorts of things, that was my bread and butter, learning how to get massive, big things done, was project designing those sorts of things. And the best way to get this level of comfort is to learn to think through projects and start building those muscles up for any large multi-step process. So you might want to don't start this off on the big, huge, important thing. Start this off on kind of a little thing just to learn the methodology behind it. But as you're breaking it down, think about these things. Number one, how long will this take? Also, what steps might take longer than others? Are there timelines that we will have to pay attention to that are outside of our control? Like when we were building a building, we had no idea how long the city planners might take to approve, permits. So we got to build in some buffer time for that. Also think about this. What needs to happen before something else? I call this project scaling. It's another important thing. There will be a sequence where things need to happen. As well as that, what can happen concurrently? Maybe you've got a part of this is going to take 2 or 3 weeks. It's outside of your control. So how do we keep our momentum going and, move a couple of other things into that 3-week time period so we don't lose 3 weeks waiting on one thing to get done? That's a question. Who needs to be involved? What teams in our church might be used for this? Sometimes you might come up with a project that takes both your finance folks and your facilities or trustees folks. You got to have an awareness of that. You got to start looping them in at that moment. And then we need to build a new temporary team for this. When I've done capital campaigns before, it's helpful to have a second capital campaign team outside of your finance folks. Those teams typically met for 3 or 4 months, and then a couple of them just kind of stayed on for a couple of years, taking care of little dangling parts of the larger plan. But that was a temporary team that had to be built. And also ask yourself, what do we need to build or create? Like if there are registration pages, or there are information or landing pages, are there sequences during this project, primarily inside of communication? Are we going to need to follow up with people about this? Are we going to need to purchase things? And when do we need to purchase them by as part of the larger plan? All those things are huge. What will our communication pathway look like? When is the first announcement about this? When is the second announcement? All of that. I'm going to hit this in here. Go to the show notes. Luke Simmons over on Twitter. He's been on the podcast before. I'm a big fan of Luke. He shared this Twitter post about how their church communicates things in this beautiful grid. And oh my goodness, podcast listeners, this was solid country gold. I'm going to link to his thread and tweet in the show notes. So make sure you go and grab that because it is phenomenal. And finally, who's going to own each part of these processes? This is key. Don't assume, instead assign. Like you need to have a name attached to each single one of these tasks and part of the processes. And if you as the pastor or the ministry leader over a certain area, if your name was on every one of those things, you need to go back and get other people involved. You've got to have ownership over each part of the process. Like I said, don't assume, instead assign. And last, step 4 is put it in a place where you can actually manage it. Now, Chad, what is your recommendation for this place? My recommendation is going to be Trello. Surprise, surprise. But this isn't for this episode. We're going to cover this episode after the Thanksgiving holiday, and we're just going to go straight into step 4. I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to have some some Trello images for you to look at because this is the most amazing way to do this because it keeps it visual. You can use multiple people, and you can save and share stuff inside of it. 4, Trello. But I do want to say a few things here. This phase is still part of the overarching idea of project management. Now, you're officially out of any sort of design phase in this moment. You're fully in the doing, but management of projects at this point in time shifts out of design and vision and into execution, moving things along at the pace that's determined in the design, keeping up with people, making sure communication internally is happening and things are moving forward, making sure external communication is happening. This means accountability. Now, both personal accountability, but also accountability with everyone else. And it will be significantly easier to have accountability when you've got a solid plan in place and you've done your work inside of these steps that are part of the design phase. Another reason I love this strategy and I love using Trello for is because when something happens, it gets broken, Or you might realize when things aren't working out in the way you thought they would, it doesn't derail the whole project. Instead, it gives you a point of adaptation. You say, hey, yeah, this thing right here, this is not what's working. We can identify that. And when that happens, you kind of slide back into design mode a little bit and ask why things might not be working. Did we not anticipate people well enough? Or maybe are we not communicating right or well enough? Did we underestimate or overestimate some part of this timeline and how long it would take to get this done? Is the wrong person working on this specific part? Now, here's the deal. The wrong person stuff, then you as the leader, as the project manager, or whoever's on point has to ask yourself the question, was this person given a clear expectation of what and how, and were they resourced properly? This is the biggest thing, because 9 times out of 10, the answer is no, they were not. And then that is my fault. I have to take ownership over that. Hashtag Jocko Willnick. I mean, it's the thing you have to do. You've got to take ownership over the issue. But when you find those hinge points, they don't stop the whole thing. Like, okay, wow, we got to do a little bit of work. We got to massage this one part of our design for this project. But hopefully by that point in time, you've learned enough things to rework that easily. You've got to keep a clear way to keep up with all of this. And that's why I love Trello. That's why it will come in handy. But again, that's inside the next episode. But there you go. Episode 122. Big project design. Thanks for sticking around this long. It's always a joy to be with you on the podcast. Make sure to come check us out, the Productive Pastor Community on Facebook. Over 1,000 pastors journeying through healthy ministry, through strategic productivity together over there. Also, make sure you subscribe for the Productive Pastor emails. Been putting a lot of energy and effort into that over the last few months, seeing the growth. It's fun. It's awesome. I write almost every week about a monthly topic of focus, going down deep into stuff. That's also where you find out about all the cool things that's going on in Productive Pastor Land. Got cool stuff happening. Got a physical product for the first time that might come out next year. Was using it earlier today and thinking, yeah, Chad, this is it. This is nice. This can be done. Love it so much. Hey, make sure you come hang out on all the socials. You can find me everywhere at Rev Chad Brooks. Love to hang out, chat, talk about stuff together, whatever. There's a lot of pictures of barbecue. Sorry about that, but I love it. Anyway, I hope you have a fantastic holiday this Thanksgiving season. Hope you're getting prepped for Advent, getting on the Advent train. But I'll be back in the next episode. It's a different one. It's kind of cool. I'm excited about it. Love to hear what you think. But until then, I'm Chad. Hope you stay productive.